Hey everybody, it's Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today I'm going to show you step by step how you can create this girl walking away in late summer grass and flowers. I'm so excited about this because it's a really good first figure painting if you haven't painted a person before and you want to just dip your toe a little bit into the waters of how to paint a human figure. This is a great entry point. The techniques are super accessible and simple. On the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
He is helping me bring this awesome beginner's tutorial to you in acrylic by making sure that when I do a color mix in the paint or teach a technique or use a tool, you guys are able to see that because our cameras are pointed at and zoomed in and switch angles so you always have the best view possible. I really love this one. I don't expect you to draw, though I will show you how I create the figure from scratch in paint. But I, of course, provide a free traceable that you can transfer on. And I will tell you in the lesson when you need to do that. If you check the description below, you're going to see all the materials, a link to the website where that traceable is, and extra information like how long the lesson is going to take, what steps there are. Those steps are time stamped so that later you can find your place again. That way you don't have to power through. You can paint along with me as I go, but it's also okay to pause me or put me on a slower play or skip the boring parts, whatever makes it work for you at home. Now, anything you see on today's show, I do have available for sale on my store, but you can also buy anywhere. I tend to use things that are good quality, so they're usually available at most art stores. So whatever's the best experience for you. There's lots of free resources like the traceable on the website, thousands of other paintings. If you just discovered today that you really like to paint women walking away, I have good news for you. I have so many girls walking away in every conceivable weather, sometimes couples walking away. I got people walking away. And if you followed me for a while, you know this is going a long time back. I've got stuff back in art school where I took photographs of our friends walking away in the woods. Apparently it's thematic for me. But it's really nice to do figures like this because it makes them more accessible to you and keeps you out of your own head. I promise it's easier than you think. Let me show you the brushes that I'm going to be using today. I've got a 3/4 inch angle. I've got a 1/2 inch angle and a 1/4 inch angle. These are all angle brushes by Princeton, and they're good and firm for acrylic paint. And I also have a detail round. The other fun tool that I'm going to be using in the class is a T-square, and that is how I'm going to keep my figure lined up so that she makes sense. But again, there's a traceable, so no stress for you. Let me show you what else we're using in today's really fun class. So on today's surface, we're getting a little bit bigger. We're going to go 11 by 14, and I have the wish or intention at the bottom that I'm going to be painting into it that love surrounds everyone. I've got Mars Black, Burnt Sienna, Cad Red Medium, Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Blue, and this is Yellow Ochre. Though what you might not know if you're very new to painting is that yellow oxide is also essentially the same color. So if you bought yellow ochre or yellow oxide, they're the same hue. They're just a different pigment. That's the step that makes the paint up. But for painting purposes, color mixing wise, you can use them interchangeably. And I also have titanium white. Let's hop into the first step. Step 1 is going to be so fun. So in step 1, I'm going to mentally divide the canvas really just a little bit past the third point, right? If I divided it mentally into thirds, I'm going to go a little bit past that and kind of dip down and paint the sky. The sky is going to be a little bit light. And because it's a light color, I'm going to actually load up my brush first with some titanium white. This is a 3/4 inch angle brush. It is by Princeton. It's in the Catalyst line. And I'm going to take just a smidge, oh gosh, so little, of my phthalo blue and put into my white. And then I'm going to get another little smidge or scotch of my yellow. So I got my phthalo blue and my cad yellow. And it's going to make kind of an antique blue-green. That's the color that I'm going for. And I want to really load up. And I'm going to just making back and forth loose brush strokes, paint the surface with this blue. It's very rough brush strokes, very light color. I'll go down to the halfway point with my paint for where the hill's going to dip, and then I'll come up again to just a little bit below the third. But you can see I'm painting it very roughly. This is a very rough painting. I can have a little more blue in the paint or a little more white as I go. This first layer, the goal is just to cover the canvas that's underneath it and to get just a light and bright sky going into the painting. Light and bright. Going along, grab a little bit of yellow because I kind of fell out of my green, and come here. Very light and bright. And it's rough. I'm making rough brush strokes. Now I don't want to dry it or anything. I may wipe my brush off with a towel, like a paint rag. We're going to call that step 1, and I'm going to show you what you're going to do in step 2. Now step 2 is where we put a little personality into the sky. So I'm going to take a little bit more of my blue and my yellow, and I'll make some slightly more rich in color areas, and I'm going to come here and blend in. You can get some more white, some more depth and dimension into that sky. You see how we're doing? A little bit darker at the top, kind of getting lighter down below. If I need to get a smidge of water onto my brush to improve flow, I can do that. Same sort of brush stroke, just a little bit lighter at the top. And get a little more blue into it here. If I get too much, I just come back with a little white. You can see we're just building up a little bit of that feeling of a cloudy day. I'm going to wipe my brush out, and I'm going to come back with just a lot more blue and white. And come up from the bottom and come back up. So there's these layers that are weaving, aren't they? And this is sort of the complexity that let's get a little more yellow in there, always playing with in our paintings, where we're like saying, oh hey, we want complex skies, but we don't want to feel like they're complex to paint. That's just really beautiful. I'm going to wipe my brush off. Not going to worry about drying it, and I'm going to grab some just white, and I'm going to come through here and make little marks with just white. Can you see how we're doing that?
Yeah, totally.
This is a very impressionistic, expressive way of painting. I'm simplifying what I'm seeing, and I'm using value and hue to kind of imply what's going on. So by adding a little more white here in the center, I'm kind of saying, oh hey, maybe these are like clouds a little bit. Let's come over here towards the sides. We can add some of this in there. And then if I want, I can come and grab just a little bit of my yellow ochre and some white. Maybe even a little more. I think I have too much pigment on there. If ever I feel like I have too much pigment, I just wipe my brush off on a paper towel and then remix. I want a light color here, see? And we're going to add some of that like dappled light is happening up in the sky. It's weird, but play with it. Have fun. Don't stress yourself out. See how I'm using very light brush pressure, and I'm making sure that my marks are irregular and they're not making patterns that hold the eye. And because the yellow is very light, it kind of feels like it belongs in the sky. That's what we've got going on. Just a nice, loose, impressionistic day. All right, we're doing so good. Let's call that a step. Now, guys, we're going to take a deep breath. Just pull in some relaxation. You can breathe with me, babe.
I'm breathing.
Let it all go. Everything is okay. Just painting. We're going to dry the surface completely. Now, if you are watching at home and painting along with me, remember you're not trying to keep up with me, you're following along. So during the times when I'm drawing and you're drawing, pause me. I don't care if it's live, a replay, or a premiere, whatever, however you're watching, you put me on pause, dry your surface, and don't hit play until you're ready to go. Okay, I'll see you back here when you're ready to go. Continuing on, we're going to add some distant foliage. I'm going to take my Mars Black and my burnt sienna. I'm still on the 3/4 angle brush, and I'm going to come here to this outer edge, making kind of similar loose brush strokes as I had before, maybe a little more brown on that mix, kind of coming up and pulling a little bit of an irregular bush shape out as you do. I'm trying to make sure that what I'm doing is creating a shape that is reminiscent of the shapes that things that are natural make. Pulling it out there, and then kind of coming over here. And when I come up to where like maybe the plant life is, I get a little looser with the brush. Come on the corner, and that makes kind of some neat little bushy patterning. All right, let's call that a step. And then we're going to continue on kind of painting this lower area down here. So I'm going to continue on with the Mars Black and the burnt sienna in this brush, quite dark here at this outer corner. Kind of coming down. This is going to be almost like a little bit of a vignette. I'm going to do something similar over here. Very dark in the corner, coming up. You can see I'm just doing that same very loose, rough brush stroke. As I'm going inward, I'm going to come in with like a little more burnt sienna. Working that back into the black. Coming around the side. Also with a little bit of the burnt sienna. Just a little more brown. And now I'm going to start mixing in some of my yellow ochre into the brown and the black. And I'll try to make that not an even mix per se, but distributed through. Now I'm going to wipe off on the paper towel to sort of offload some pigment. Kind of come in here. Maybe even a little bit of the black into the yellow ochre. And then as I'm going to come through here, I'm going to go ahead and add a little white into that. a little bit back in. Maybe pull that back down here towards the front. Again, making it uneven and irregular, so it's all very loose. That's like the big point, is just trying to help it be a little bit loose and natural feeling. I'm pulling a little color through here. Now let's rinse this brush out very thoroughly. I'm not going to worry about drying anything. Doesn't need to dry. But I do want to make sure I'm not leaving paint on it. Let's go on to the next step, and we're going to size down on the brush. So step 5, I'm going to actually use a 1/2 inch angle brush. And I'm going to grab a little bit of my burnt sienna and my Mars Black, titanium white, and yellow ochre. Maybe a little more burnt sienna. I'm going to make this bush just a little more dimensional. If I come back, I can always go more into the black. Back here. Just creating a little more interest and depth. Look at that. A little more interest and depth. I'm going to bring my black over here. I want some of this to be a little more interesting and deep too. I'm going to bring some smaller little black marks out here to the corner. Going to rinse out. Now I'm going to take a little of my burnt sienna over towards my yellow ochre. And add some loose, kind of natural plant life here. Just some interest. Sometimes I'll come up into the lighter area with the color just to create some dynamic fun in the piece. And you'll notice I'm just working this brush sort of down and across. And by just making these irregular brush strokes, it helps me create that sense of something being organic. And come here with just a little bit of yellow and maybe some white. Not really making patterns so much at this stage, right? I am trying to create a sense of space. When I come up to areas that are kind of here in the horizon, sometimes I'll go more into my corner of my brush just to layer these objects. Get that sense of late summer.
Oh, I kind of like it. Actually, I really like the browns.
Yeah, and be pretty in a house, you know? Like sometimes for paintings, I look at it and I think, oh, this will be nice in a home. Bringing a little of that up there. Now get a little more white on here. Definitely work that beige out. Sometimes I might come back into more just yellow ochre, pure pigment in this center area. Kind of layering that in. It's working in that space. It's sort of super duper fun. Now, this is one of those weird moments where I'm definitely going to want to dry things again. So let's dry everything thoroughly. So this is the stage where you would use the traceable to transfer on the figure. At this stage, I am going to sketch it out. If you're wanting to see what's my process, how do I sketch these things out, how does that happen? Now I'm going to do it in paint, and I only do it that way because that helps you guys see what I'm doing. It's not the best way to do this. It's just the best way for you guys to be able to visualize what it is. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to bring it over just a smidge. Just maybe actually I'll just center it because it'll be fine to be centered. It'll be fun being centered. I'm going to go ahead and center this. And I'm going to go and take an angle brush and I'll use some white paint and we'll see if that doesn't kind of give us enough. And I want to stop my figure. I need to leave some room, so I have to stop at least by 10, and I'll take it up to 1, and maybe I'll move this over to like a yellow so that I can see this. Right? So this is the space I'm feeling like my figure is going to take up in my painting, right? And so then I have to make some decisions about objects and everything. If you were doing this along with me, if you're trying to sketch along with me, you'd want to use a colored chalk or something that you could see fairly well. I'm going to go ahead and take my #1 round and a little bit of yellow paint and see if I can't get it sketched in with just some cad yellow. And the first thing that I'll do is I'll say, okay, I've got a top of the hat here, which is an ellipse. And I'll do 2 kind of vertical downs and then another little matching curve line that can be the bottom of the hat as you go, you know. And I'm going to make kind of a matching little back of the hat smile there. Sort of speak to my hat ellipse. Those things are always pretty nice. And hopefully, can they see the yellow okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to want to come down. I need a whole head and then a neck. So I just kind of have to visualize the head comes into like this space here. And I want a nice neck. So I can then sit there and guesstimate that my shoulders will be right around this space. The other nice thing about a light color when I'm doing it in paint is if I have to change my mind, and I sometimes will, I'm going to sit there and say my waist is perhaps right here. All right, so I'm going to loosely sketch what I feel like is the bottom half, right? The business end.
Mm-hmm.
And that will help me figure out my line on my leg. And sometimes as I'm sketching, I'll be like, oh, I gotta change it. So this is still sketchy for me as if I were using pencil or some other kind of tool that I could change my mind on. And I'm just looking to grab myself a nice little figure in there. It's really hard to sketch and paint. I will let you know that for sure. I'm gonna sit there and say coming off this hip down like this would be the thigh, knee, right? Little calf down here. And so I need more room right in there for feet, and I can see that for the figure to balance out. You guys have the traceable, so this tends to work out for y'all better.
Right, yeah.
Just because you'll be like, oh, well, I have the traceable, so. So if I'm here, then I can sit there and say that my foot which is coming back towards the viewer, would take up about that space. And so by giving myself a stop line, I still left myself room to have a foot, have those things. Sketch out a little bit of calf. So much easier in chalk, I can't tell you guys.
Yeah, I can imagine. This is the part where you concentrate.
Well, I have to. If I don't concentrate, things tend to get off alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes in this thing where I'm showing you the sketching, if I don't pay attention or I don't focus, I can lose my line. And that actually happened earlier to me. So I'm now just paying a little more attention to my line. And this is, again, a spectacularly, well, it's good for you at home to see. It's a spectacularly difficult tool for me to use for this process. So don't do what I'm doing. Make sure I've got a good line on that heel. And luckily a lot of this will be sort of down under either dress or plants. So it does give us some forgiveness in what we're doing. We know we want to bend elbows about where we have waists. That helps us a lot. And just get sort of a sense of placement for the whole figure. Now let's look at this in the canvas. I can't, so when we get zoomed in, I also can't do the virtual step back to sort of take in what I'm doing and figure out where I need to move things. That's a harder thing for me as well, is like, where do I need to move objects when I can't see it? So if I need to move a hip up, I won't know it until we back out on the view. And I wonder if for you guys not seeing the sketching up close is good as well, because it doesn't let you orient. We'll have to see where we get when we're in the paint. This is one of the reasons why I tend to not treat tracing as cheating, is because even all of this being said, once this object is on, and I may actually bend the toes forward from here. I may elongate the foot and bend these toes forward. Once the object is on, and then you begin to paint in the structure. Yeah, I think that's what I want to do. Stepping forward. Okay. So once the object's on, you have so much painting in and painting out, and you know, those tracing lines get lost very quickly in the process. So they don't really give you anything other than just a general guideline. You're doing much more than you think, even when you use a traceable. Let's call this a step, and we'll kind of paint in like some more of the background bushes and stuff like that. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow ochre here and a smidge of my phthalo blue and a little white. Interestingly enough here, I'm going to come through here and sort of add, let's get a little more white on here, some interesting color to the grasses, to the florals. I'm still going the 1/2 inch. Gives me a nice bit of control, but does not overwhelm me. I can even come up into my yellow and my blue and get a little more green going. And then come into my white. I'm just kind of creating a sense of light right here and color. It's not the sky coming into the grass. It's just maybe a little hint of green left over in the drawing. It's kind of nice. I like that very much. I'm going to take a little of my black and my yellow here. Kind of blend back in this way. If I have too much water, I can wipe off my brush on my paper towel. And again, it's little crisscrossing and hatching strokes. You can see it blends into that blue-green. It becomes a subtle effect of color. And I'll paint into the leg a little bit. Maybe add a little yellow, my cad yellow, to my yellow ochre and white as I'm coming through here. See how that does brighten it up a bit? That's fun. So where you see these light values is where perhaps more light is being cast down the hill. And come around and hit some of this on this side, maybe a little black and yellow as well this way. All right, I'm getting pretty happy with the line as I'm seeing it paint out.
I like it.
Maybe a little black right here. kind of caught the side of my canvas. It was just a weird moment. It was like, didn't show up on the canvas. I just hit the side with it. It's sort of funny.
You all right?
Yeah, no. It did nothing. It was just one of those. I had paint and then I left paint over here and then none take with me. All right, I'm going to put out a little burnt sienna. Maybe a little more. I'm coming to the end of my tube, as you do sometimes. And when you come to the end of your tube, sometimes you squeeze the last bits of juice out, if that makes sense. Oh my goodness. The cap left a plug in the tube.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, they do that. The paint will dry in the cap, and then that will come in and plug the top of the tube, and then you just got to pull it out. It's not particularly terrible. It's just a thing that sometimes in painting happens. Take a little bit of my yellow over here, my cad yellow, into my yellow ochre. I know I have another shadow maybe to put here based on a dress, but I'm right now just really enjoying and playing. It's a relaxing painting. Let's take a deep breath. Relax any tension that we're carrying. So easy to get tension going. I'm adding little bits of light and dark. I'm going to wipe off on the paper towel, and I may grab some just burnt sienna. Sometimes it's fun to play with just the pure pigment because it's so vibrant. You know, it's like, yes, it's a brown, but it's a brown with just then all of a sudden a lot of personality. Come on this other side and find some balance to that. I always think it's a good idea, especially in natural spaces, to like kind of pull colors perhaps through. Let's wipe that out. We're going to call that a step. Now I am going to get into my detail brush, and I will put my vision enhancers on once again. And I'm going to go ahead and load up with maybe some just yellow ochre. And we're going to add some little lines. I find with this type of grass work that it's a good idea to really be multi-directional with your brush. I'm just placing these around different places, just little lines like tall grasses. Now I'm going to get some dark black. I've thinned it with water. I'm going to make sure that there's no little fine Just little black lines as well. See, we're just creating these different little textures and lines through the surface. And get a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow ochre together so we get a very light grass. And you mix them up there. I'm just doing very light pressure, and I'm doing an upward stroke and leaving just a little bit of a minor line. Let's get a little bit of our burnt sienna. When the flowers lay here, sometimes these little upward stems really help too. Just doing a late summer walk through dry leaves and grasses. Okay, let's dry everything with our hair dryer. And when we come back, I'm going to show you what you do next. So we're going to start painting in our figure, and it's summer, so we're going to assume a little more color in her skin and kind of want to warm that up. I'm going to take my yellow ochre and my burnt sienna and maybe some titanium white kind of as a base here. It's pretty easy to build up and down from that, so that's a good place to start. I'm going to come along the foot here. And even though I'm coming down with the skirt, I will paint the thigh up a little. Just because I think that that will help. And I will go ahead and come under the hat here at the upper part of the chest and start putting in some of the back. And I'll go down below where I plan to put the dress. I'm using a 1/4 of an inch angle brush. 1/4 of an inch angle brush. Same thing, Princeton Catalyst. Bringing a little bump out there to say, oh, there's a shoulder. I'll go ahead and bump out there to say that there's a shoulder. And hopefully we have the angle pretty good.
It's looking pretty good.
On the arm. Bring that in. This is sort of a layer one, so, you know, it can be a little streaky. It can be, you know, bring that in. I may want to trim that up. Don't actually like that line in. Get a little bit of the sky color. If we need to trim anything in, we can pretty easily just come along that arm. Now, I do want the leg that is kind of behind, maybe to be a little more in the shade, so I'm going to make it with a more burnt sienna. I mean, the one that's kind of coming forward is a little more in the shade. And it's going to take a couple layers for me to get the full skin tone on this, so it does take me a second generally to get it. Come here maybe with another little. Just adding a little more pigment so we're not as streaky. All right, while that's having a dry, I'm going to come up here in my hat. I'm going to use my yellow ochre and my cad yellow medium together. And then I will shade with black, and I will tint with white. But right now we just have to get a basic layer in, right? Just that basic sort of. We have this. I'm going to take a little bit of my cad red and a smidge of my Mars black. Still have a 1/4 inch angle brush just because it's a good detail brush. And just start getting that basic first layer of red under there. Now as we go, we're going to have shadows coming over this way, and the skirt kind of, and the hair blowing this way, and that's going to create some nice off-center balance. So my skirt will come along the leg line and kind of flow over that way. And once I have that in, that will help me get some shadows. Come along this little edge, and you can kind of see ruffle that. bring those little ruffles through. And I just get a little more pure red as I come out this way. So it's sort of red with black up through there, and then as I come out into the grass, I get a little more pure red. And now I need to dry my figure. Dry my figure. So I'm going to come through here. I'm going to switch over to my number 1 detail, and that's just because I want more control. And I'm going to mix my skin tone of burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and black over here with my more yellow ochre and a little more white. I'm going to create some highlights that I can use. And come over here to this calf. Pulling this brighter color down. And at the top, kind of create a little triangle. Maybe a little highlight there. Smidge of one here. Now, top of the elbow there. And I will be exaggerating this further. Elbow there. Oops, went a little far out. So what I'm doing is I'm just sort of picking up a line I didn't like. And you can totally do that. That's a very doable thing. And on the inside of the arm, and kind of down. Now I'm going to add a little more burnt sienna to this mix that I have. A little more white. Along here. Now, where I've got to paint big areas, I'll go back into my 1/4 inch. I'm just trying to have some control where I want control. So let's get our little angle brush out, or 1/4 inch angle brush, for just a second. Little yellow ochre, burnt sienna white. Now I'm going to go ahead and get right into my burnt sienna. Kind of add a little highlight out there. So I'm just trying to capture that, you know, one leg is more in shadow than the other. Little shading here at the arc and at the ball. A little bit on that inside leg. A little bit on the lower arm. And the inside arm. It's not bad. It's looking okay. Just that next layer, right? Just going layer by layer. Now I'm taking a little white and yellow ochre just along that inside leg. A little bit up the back of that heel. A little bit there. Just a kiss there. A little bit of white, yellow, and burnt sienna. Back of that leg. A little bit of burnt sienna and Mars black. Little shade under each elbow I think is nice. Gonna bring a little bit of a light dusting. Maybe under the skirt a little bit. At the heel. Too much there. That was a little too much. And if ever I get too much, I'll just come back and kind of blend it out. I do want it shaded at the back of the arm, but I'm not trying to darken it quite that much. Back more into the yellow ochre. And dust that across here a little bit. Just, you know, where the sun is. It could be a little bit on the outside arm. Gonna take a little bit of my burnt sienna and my Mars black. This is some work, guys. Don't worry about it. It's okay. These are just foundational skills. Bringing just a little dark kind of shadow line on the inside. And a little bit under the elbows, just for contrast. These are fine lines. A fine line there between the dress and the little fine line under the dress there. Fine line between the feet. A little bit under the heel. A little bit down. A little bit ball of the foot. Not too bad.
No, not at all. I like it.
All right, let's call this a step. Excellent. Now, when we have that in, I'm going to go ahead and take my black here, really load it up on my little detail brush, my number 1 round. I thinned it with water. And I'm going to come here from the side of the hat. And brush over a sweep of hair. Just thinning out. And a lot of times I'll roll my brush on my paper towel just to make sure that there's no hidden drop or paint or just some sort of unpleasant surprise that I'm not ready for. Just bring little fine lines out. I do like to curve them. Some little wild hairs that have separated from the main bunch. And then a little bit over towards the left. Now I will go ahead and take my 1/4 inch brush just so that in the area where I have to have a solid amount of hair, right, where we're saying there's a solid, I'll just fill it in with that. And that will help me not spend forever using the teeniest, tiniest brush in the world. Just pulling that little hair, it's blowing off into the wind. I think it's one of those funner parts of the painting that you get to do. Like to make sure that, you know, a nice full head of hair. You know, and you just play with that until you're happy with what you see. It's a nice little gust.
It really is.
The skirt and the hair are on the same gust, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's call that a step, and then we're going to come up and work on the hat. So I'm going to come into my straw color, which was my yellow, ochre, and my cad yellow, and I'm going to add some white to it. And at the top, I'm going to brush on a little bit of that light straw color. Kind of down the hat and then kind of around about half back. And then across the back of the head. I'm still using my detail brush because it's just giving me a lot of detail control where I need it. I will go up over the edge of the hair. Just so we have a nice little edge. Might get some just pure white on here and kind of come to the top. That'd be like bright light. Just a little bit brushing back, just that bright, bright light you might expect to have. And then back into the straw color. Just back into that straw color, coming back on the side that's more in shadow. Oops. Okay, picked up a little too much with my little detail brush, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off.
I see that there, just a little bit.
Just a little too much, and that sometimes will happen. I'm going to brush that back. A little bit of a light top up here. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to take a little bit of my straw color in my black. Make a little bit of a shadow. Come down that side. Even around in the brim, kind of coming off this way. See how we're kind of blending that little shadow there?
Yeah.
Just going to brush back. Just a little bit of that shadow. And then I'm going to get some thinned black, which I had from earlier from the hair, and I will just come across the little band. Nice, stylish little black band on our straw hat. Because we're Fabulosity, that's why. Okay, let's call that a step. How's our figure looking? Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty nice. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of yellow ochre and white together. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've got a nice highlight along that heel. Along a little bit on that arm. This is just that bright light that can, you know, sometimes catch on stuff. So even though she's got some shadow going on, that's okay. Now I'm going to get my angle brush out. I'm going to grab a little bit of my red, smidge of black, maybe more than that smidge. Make kind of a darker red at an angle across the bodice and down. And let's get a little bit of that in there. And then we're also going to kind of have a little bit of this dark right here. What it is my canvas is so close to the edge of my surface and so close to my painting that I keep hitting it. So if you're wondering, like, why do I keep hitting it? It's because the way we have the cameras on and everything has to be together, it's super hard to get around everything.
We'll have to make some changes later.
Yeah, but if you're wondering how would you prevent that, you would want to space out your stuff more. You want to space your you don't want it so far you're reaching, right? But you don't want it so close that you are hitting paint across the canvas. So sometimes when you see me like set up here, there are good things about the way that I set up, and then sometimes there's just YouTube things about the way that I set up that are for the cameras, but not really for the painting. Because it's good for the cameras to see things a certain way. If that makes sense.
Totally does.
Yeah. Yeah. I've written some stuff up about how to set up your surface, like about orienting towards your dominant hand. You don't want things too close, but you don't want them so far. You don't want to be reaching or bending, and you also don't want to be squished. It's about finding a reasonable amount of body comfort for what you're doing. Going to come here and just brushing back that little shadow. There we go. I've got a nice little shadow going back. That looks good. And then let's come back and add a little bit of our red. Kind of dry brush that back so that's there. Just getting this much, much more into the vibrancy of the red. It's very, very good. And then we're going to bring some yellow over to our red. Brushing that back through, just kind of warming it up. And then you want to get some white into it. Just add a little bit of a highlight kind of coming down the fabrics. The dry brush. And that should give us a very nice, well-lit dress that's blowing back. Look at us
It
go.
does. Look at that. Look at that.
Man, we're getting there. We're getting there. Nothing. It's okay. Nothing's damaged. I was
No, I
just
like
like
it.
looking to see where'd that end up going. It's all good. All right. Now, when we come back, I'm going to show you how to put in the flowers and the rest of the little details and shadows in this world to make her seem like she's more solidly integrated into this space. So now I want to add some more shadows, colors, highlights, things that help objects sort of stand out from the other. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some shadows, and I'm going to take a little bit of my burnt sienna and my Mars black, my 1/4 inch angle, and I'm going to come along here and sort of speak to the little shadow that would be coming off over this way, right, up into the grass. I can go right into my yellow oxide. It's okay to paint over some of the grasses because they'll just then peek out of a different space. And that doesn't mess us up. Let's look at this a little more overhead. Just real quick so you can kind of see, take in the totality of where we're going. Okay, then you can get back in to see how the brush strokes are being constructed. And you can see I'm sort of blending this out a bit. So the shadow's there, but it's also kind of blended into the world that it's in. See how we're doing that? We're diffusing that.
Yeah, totally.
So let's look overhead, see where we're at. Yeah, so we're putting some shadows into the ground. Now come back with some yellow ochre. And again, soften this a bit. And it can be a little hard sometimes to see where stuff needs to soften and where it needs to deepen. That can be its own little challenge. Make sure that that's all sort of, you know. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my black, very thin. I'm kind of add a little shadow across the back of the leg there. Just a little bit. Can you see what I did there?
Yes, totally.
It's not an opaque painting of it. It's just a little shadow that might be cast across the back of the leg from the dress. I can even pull in a little bit of a shadow there. That side. Sometimes it's just nice to add a bit of a shadow to things. I went up and added a bit of a shadow. I was up here. Didn't know if you went with me. Just putting in a little depth can make a big difference. All right, so now I'm going to come through and we've got flowers and grasses and colors to put in. Lots of fun, lots of fun. So first I'm going to go through and add a little bit of my light yellow ochre. No, but it could be. I don't think it is. Let's actually call it a new step. That's okay. That's a neat idea. I like that. We'll call this a new step. I'm adding little bits of light. Through here, just a couple places in the beige and other colors that we have. Especially up top there where there might be light coming down. Let's come and add some light up there. Just little touches on the 1/4 inch angle. Right, a little white and a little yellow ochre. I always think it's nice to pull things through. I'm kind of coming across to the side here. I don't know if we're seeing me. Sometimes I move faster than the camera adjusts robotically.
Sometimes that's why I have to switch. I have switchable cameras.
It's very late in the day, guys, so I'm trying to be like, boom, energy.
No, this is good. I think this has really turned out nice.
So, there we go. Just trying to make sure there's some balance, some painterliness with all of this so that it just feels like, yeah, you know, we're in there, we got it. Now the first red that I'm going to take out there, I am going to put a little red and maybe smidge some black into it just so that it's not the brightest. And I'm going to make little marks around with this slightly deeper red. When they come forward, I might make them bigger. And that's because, you know, they're closer. But I'll still put in small marks because sometimes what we see is flowers like peeking through foliage and things. I love Cad Red for this personally, but you can use whatever red that you have. You know, I think the reds just sometimes they give us more of a purple and more of an orange depending on their bias. Sometimes it's touch with the tip, and I'm just trying to make it feel loose and open. But you can see that the pulling the red from the dress into the flowers creates sort of a nice continuity, right? Making them around there. When I put together several brush strokes or go stroke, 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 stroke next to each other, that's like little clumps of flowers together. Visually, that's how that's going to read. Can you really see how sometimes red and black make brown? Because there's a little bit of a feeling of it being brown. All right, when we get that, we're going to rinse out our brush very thoroughly, 1/4 inch brush. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and load up some of my yellow ochre, Mars black, and white. And I'm going to add some little upward grass strokes just to make sure that the feet feel like they're a little, that they're walking through the same landscape up here. You see how that sort of anchored
Just
everything
grounded
in
her a little bit.
just a little bit and anchors her in just some. Sometimes you want to do that. You want to anchor. Coming back with some little black. Anchor stuff in a little. Show that it's integrated, part of the whole. Okay, now we're going to come through with some red. Sometimes I'll come over marks that I've already made, and sometimes I'll make new marks. All right, same brush. Just that brighter pop of red can really help us. It's going to be wild, but when we get to the white, that will be the one that you really, really notice. It's crazy how that's true, but it's what you're going to notice most. Just running this through. We're doing great. Hopefully you feel like you're doing great. I feel like you're doing great where you are. I got to tell you, best gig in the universe is getting to be your art teacher. And the reason for that is that I can be here just encouraging you to be the awesome you that you are. Man, there's just nothing cooler than that in the world. All right, so we've added some red through there. Now we're going to pull some white into that red. Add some white into the red, which is, you know, an interesting kind of little pink. Don't really want it loosely mixed. I do want it kind of really distinctly pink. So it's what it is not a different color flower. We're just really sort of talking about where maybe the highlights are extreme. Putting some of that right there. That takes it sort of through. pulling those through, and I haven't even gotten to the white. It's going to be fun. So yeah, we are doing flowers more based on their shape. We're not, necessarily saying, all right, this petal, that petal, this petal, that petal. All right, very cool. Let's call this a step, and now we'll do the white flowers. New step, 16. 16 is mean. Not really. So I can take my white and I can get a smidge of my phthalo blue in it if I need a slightly darker or not bright white, which sometimes, over here in like, say the shadows, you might not want it as bright. Maybe just get some pure white going up here. Super fun. Isn't the white just vibrant?
It's really amazing. I like it.
I feel like the white adds a whole layer. I mean, like, obviously,
It
literally
does.
does,
I
but
mean, just it adds a whole another layer of sophistication.
it just feels like, because like wildflowers usually come in mixes, right? And white is such a common wildflower color. I think that it does tend to. Now, another thing that I can do is I can take a little of my Mars black and burnt sienna and some of these add little centers. Which again, another little layer. Check that out. So you feel like you're seeing a little center, maybe like a
Yeah,
like
it's cool.
Daisy or something.
Something
going. I'm gonna just definitely another little layer of grass with more white in it. Down low, so that pulls what's here forward. It gives some dimensionality. And really there's nothing to do but for me to sign. I don't normally sign in red, but there's so much red in this, I feel like I could.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
Because it wouldn't necessarily pull from the painting. So I'm going to thin out a little bit of red and pop a little signature here. There we go. A late summer walk. Isn't that great? It just feels like that, doesn't it?
It's
Last days
amazing.
of summer right here. Bright, hot, amazing.
Hold on a
It
second.
attracted nature. That's how realistic it is. We come back, I'm going to tell you what we do next. So you've done the painting, and I'm hoping you're feeling great. These are interesting first steps. Your first painting of a figure, your first painting of a flower, your very first paintings. All of these firsts are a huge deal, and I hope that you're taking the time to really celebrate them and not spending too much time being critical of your work. And the reason for that is that critique down the road, hundreds of paintings in, when you have a lot of art skills and you're really, really blocked, can be really helpful, especially from a professional artist, because a really good, well-trained professional artist won't criticize the work as much as give suggestions that are actionable on places or things that you can do with the work to take it to that next level or to go the direction you say you're trying to go. Criticism just kind of really tears people down, I find, in creativity when it's done incorrectly. So if my one goal I can put forward for you is this, which is that try to take in your work from the perspective of the moments that you really thought you got a concept or the things in the painting that you really did right, and not put a lot of weight or balance in things that you're, especially as a new artist, feeling critical of, because you'll get there. You paint 100 figures, you're going to get better at painting figures. You paint 100 loose florals, you're going to get better at painting loose florals. It's just what makes you better at painting is painting. In fact, I believe this so much that every year, like every single year since 2019, I do a daily painting with my community in April.
Yeah.
Because they're always like, how do I get better at painting? I'm like, oh, paint every day. You paint every day, you will get better at painting. And I believe that so much that I teach that class for free every year. If you're interested in that, you go by the website. You can see a link to either Acrylic April or the school. The school has the Acrylic Aprils all sequentially in there with their extra information, but you can also just find them as separate playlists on my website for free. I have thousands of art lessons.
Yep.
You could do a daily painting. You will be better at painting. So keep in mind that being a beginner, it's a very short and precious time, and enjoy your growing up into the next level of your artistic journey. That's the biggest thing you can do. Now, I'd love it if you shared your painting with me. I always love to see how you guys do. You can do that a couple of places. You can come by Facebook. There's an official group, the Art Sherpa official group. It's curated, pre-approved. We don't have spammers. We don't have meanies. We don't allow any of it. You can come in and very safely share any painting that you're working on, your favorite painting or your least favorite painting, and find that you're going to run into people who are like an art family and who are going to be really supportive of you. And I really mean that. When people discover it, I can't tell you how many people have quit Facebook entirely except for this group, where they just come in to get in the group and then they get out, which is kind of how I do Twitter, where you can also share your artwork with me. I go in and I see what you guys have shared with me and I reshare it. If you're still over there, I try to come by at least once a week and look. I'm not loving Twitter right now, but I do try to come by and see your stuff. There's also Discord. If you're not into Facebook, there's Instagram and there's Pinterest and there's TikTok. There's lots of places to share with me, and I'm always excited to see your stuff. If you have a question that didn't get answered during the show, I check my channel all the time, so leave it after. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe, because guess what's going to be coming up?
What's
Another painting.
Ah.
And it's going to keep coming up. Even if you just found this and this is a 5-year-old painting, guess what? There's a new painting. If I'm here on planet Earth, there's a new painting scheduled. I'm going to be like Mother Time at some point up on YouTube, if YouTube is still here, being like, I'm the oldest woman in the world. I'm going to be 114 painting on YouTube. That's what I'm going to be, right? I am. If I'm breathing, I'm painting. So, check. See, I might still be there. And if I'm not, I get to be here forever through these videos with you. So wherever we are in the time continuum, it's just good to see you. So share with me, subscribe. Remember, if you saw something on the show that you thought you'd like and you don't know where to buy it, I have an art store. You could buy it from me.
Yep.
Or you could go look at a picture of it and cross shop it, as a smart artist should, and get a good price and have a good time.
And yeah.
Oh, was that beep nothing?
No, that's the beep's okay. That's just the beep of the power saying, you know what? There's
Okay.
a storm coming.
There was a beep, but I thought that was like, it's
Nah,
the
it's a
end
beep.
of everything. But it's not. It's
just
an
a beep,
irrelevant beep, so don't worry. So know that these are fun and laugh along with me, because we're fun like that. Now, finally, be good to yourself, be good to each other, and I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.